The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
Close your eyes and pull like a dog.
And a new Irish record for Phil Healy, 22.99.
Christy Cooney hands over the Sam Maguire Cup to Graham Canty, Cork All-Ireland champions for the 7th time ever.
Hello and welcome to the Star Sport podcast. My name is Jack McCarran of the Southern Star and I'm joined by Star Sport editor Kieran McCarthy. Before we kick things off, I'd just like to give a gentle reminder to our listeners and viewers to please rate, review and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and YouTube. The Star Sport podcast is brought to you in association with our friends at Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, where your bank really does matter. Choose the credit union, choose local, choose community. On this week's podcast, we're chatting to Eamonn Harte and Brendan Walsh about their former teammate, Padraigh Griffin, who passed away tragically in October. Padraigh was a Clonakilty legend, and Eamonn and Brendan have been speaking to Kieran about what he was like on and off the pitch and about just what made him such a force with Clon. In part 2, we'll bring you all the latest news, including the championship draws for 2023, with two particularly juicy-looking West Cork groups of death in the Premier Senior and Senior A grades. But we're going to start with the legacy of Padraigh Griffin today and the conversation Kieran had with his former teammates. Kieran, Padraigh's passing was a terrible loss for Clonakilty and the wider Cork GAA community.
You could see the outpouring of sadness and grief when news of Padraig's passing. That was in late October when that news started to kind of I suppose seep around the county, and you could also see the grief that was there, how much Padraigh Griffin, the man and the footballer, meant to so many different people, because it was an incredible outpouring, all the tributes towards Padraigh Griffin, and that's why we decided to have this chat with two of his former teammates who soldiered alongside him in the trenches with Clonakilty. And when you're talking about Padraigh Griffin, the footballer, the word legend just keeps popping up. Wherever you talk to, they'll say he was a legend. He's a Clonakilty legend. His legacy is assured. But there was more to Padraigh Griffin than the man who got the goal against the Bars in '96, or the man who terrorised Seamus Moynihan in that '96 county final, or the man who won his second county title in 2009 then. So I was talking to the lads too, just about Padraigh Griffin, the friend, what he was like off the field, and just how they'll best remember their friend. So it was a really nice chat, and I think the two boys did a really fitting tribute to a Clonakilty, West Cork and Cork GA legend.
Okay then, Kieran, let's hear now from Eamonn Harte and Brendan Walsh.
I'm going to start with you first, Brendan. When you hear the name Padraigh Griffin, what's the first memory or moment you think of?
I was a couple of years older than him, so I can recall my younger brother Eamonn coming home from an under-21 championship match, saying that to this fella Griffin, who played on the team. And I said, what age is he? And he reckoned he was still about only 15/16 at the time. And that's all he could talk about. I didn't actually recall whether they won the game or not, but that's all he was talking about. And that was the first moment I heard. Obviously, I knew of him because I was in the town and you'd be aware of who people were, but that was the first moment for me that this guy was something special, because my brother just could not stop talking about him.
Same question to you, Eamonn. What's your first thought when you hear Padraig's name?
Like for me, I'd be a bit younger. I'd be a couple of years younger than Pod. So, for me, when I was a kid, like our thing was soccer, the courts, after school, lunchtime, before school, going into the hall. Sometimes not through the correct route, but it was always about playing ball, and it was always about the best game possible. And if we had 9, as Shay said the day of the funeral, unfortunately, if we had 9, Griff always wanted to be on the team of 4 because he always wanted to test himself that little bit more, you know. So that would have been my first memories, and then obviously, GA. I was kind of coming up behind him, so he was blazing the trail at our club level, at under 21 and minor, but he never really, even though he was brilliant to us and for us, he never took off until the kind of the 96 year that he exploded onto the scene completely, you know.
Going to chat about 96 quite soon, and we're going to chat about Padraigh the footballer as well, and what a superstar he was for Clon. But he was more than that to so many people too. He was a husband to Debbie, he was a dad to Jack and Alex, he was a friend, a teammate. Can you tell me a small bit more about Padraigh off the field, what he was like?
Padraigh was naturally shy, you know. He preferred to be in the corner. If we were having a drink in the pub afterwards, he certainly wouldn't be taking center stage. He was quietly spoken, and he was a kind of a deep guy in a lot of ways. You know, didn't want the limelight whatsoever on the field. He was a totally different personality. He was off the cuff, but he was very private. Padraigh was private and never one to make too much noise at all outside the pitch. He'd amble down to training. You wouldn't almost see him come in the door of the training room pitch. You know, he'd amble in and amble out, and didn't do a huge amount of socializing. Some of us maybe did a little bit more, but Padraigh was the type of guy who probably went home and preferred to watch soccer matches or football matches, or he was big into computer games as well. So that's the type of thing he did. He lived very, very low key, kind of a life really, where he had a couple of passions, but he certainly never made a song and a dance about too many of them.
Eamonn, Brendan said there he was kind of kept a low profile, didn't like the limelight. I think he went into the spotlight in 96, and I'm thinking of that semi-final in Mangan against the Bars. I think where Clon, couple of 2 points down, going into injury time. Monaghan, he had a free drop short ball, the rebound fell to Padraigh Griffin, and from what I heard is the rest is history. Out of nothing, he created this goal, got Clonakilty into the county final, and the rest is history after that. Was that one of the moments where Padraigh Griffin announced himself as a real footballer in, I suppose, county-wide?
Yeah, I suppose that year was a real kickstart year for us as a group, and I'm talking about the whole club as a group, but from under 21 upwards, really that year was a kickstart year. Like before we got to the day in Bandon, I was lucky enough that I was part of an under 21 team for Clon that won the first under 21 Southwest title, and we were captained by Griff. So our magic was starting a little bit earlier in the year, you know, with this under 21, and he was tormenting every club team in that all the way through before we got as far as the Bars. But like, there was an awful lot about that like game that, you know, I think we were only a point down anyway, and a point would have done us to draw the game. So it's just it showed the ambition of the guy that he just wanted to take the shot on, and you know, as was said, John Kearns and the defender got a block in it, but it's only Griff would have gone for the second shot. You know, most people would have ran out the gate with a draw down to 14 men, unfortunately. But most fellas would have kind of gone, Jesus, you know, get us out of here with a draw. We'd be dead happy and get back another day and try and have another cut off and, you know, try and be in the same position again, you know. And
then went on to the county final then. Onto the county final against UCC in a certain future All-Ireland captain in Seamus Moynihan and an all-star defender. Padraigh Griffin ran him ragged that day. Is that one of the days that also kind of accelerated the reputation that Padraigh was building up at the time?
Yeah, well, Brendan would probably know more from the college side of things, but Padraigh was in college at the time, and they knew of him but I don't think they expected, you know, what came that day. Like, it's fine to say that, you know, the team won it, but I think that day the team was being pushed by, I'd say, 25,000 people that were there, kids, grandparents, you know, everything. But definitely, Mr. Moynihan definitely had his test that day with Paddy anyway, you know.
Brendan, just to get your own recollections of '96 and the role Padraigh Griffin played in that famous Clonakilty win. I think it was the first time, was it in over 44 years, the Clon were crowned senior champions again?
That's right. We just went on the crest of a wave, essentially, after jump starting the first game against Shandoon and getting over that just in a terrible quality game, and that's where we were. I think it was the total confidence thing. Like most teams, when you get on a run and a winning run, it's almost as hard to get out of that as it is to win a game if you're not winning. But like we had a solid game against Ballincollig in the second game and beat a very fancy Duhallow team in the quarterfinal. But it was that blistering late summer game in September of 1996 where we played the Bars. And looking back in one or two photographs of it recently, you just see that the place was as packed as it would ever be. And that made for the theatre it was. So it got the fitting end from the point of view of Padraig's goal. But I remember Padraig explaining the goal afterwards, and I was actually directly in his line of sight, and I understood totally what he was saying. You know, the free kick fell short. It went into his hand. Certainly the first kick, he should have popped it over the bar. Like there was one or two of the Bars defenders on the goal line, and John Kearns, God rest him, you know, one of the best Cork keepers of his generation, inside and goal. And he had a shot that was really a shot of nothing, and it came off John Kearns's hands, which was a good save for him. But the actual rebound, there was so much momentum from the Bars defence. The two guys that were in goal, they had rushed out. John Kearns was on the ground. You know, from my angle, and Padraig said it afterwards, it was an easy goal. There was a big open goal right in front of him, and he was straight bang on the target. So the goal was there to be taken, and like Padraig, you know, that's what he was about. He was not going to turn that chance down. There were plenty of other goals that he got in games, which had such slender margins to try and get the goal, and he eked goals out of there. But that day, the goal was on the second shot. It wasn't on the first shot, but that was him. He had the courage and the single-mindedness which you need in a team to take on the shot. And he took it. He got his second chance. It just fell into his lap. He was so lucky. It fell into his lap, and it was a fairy tale ending, which took him to the final as a kind of a marked man because he had played so well in the semi-final. And whereas he didn't score in the final, he absolutely ran Seamus Moynihan all over the pitch, and they had a man-marking job. Obviously, Seamus was not really interested in coming forward, which was probably a tactic that fell into our hands because Seamus Moynihan obviously was an outstanding emerging inter-county player at the time, and if he had been attacking from centre-back, we'd have something to mind, but we didn't. He just watched Padraigh Griffin for the entire game. They followed each other all over the place, and you know, they had a great battle. They absolutely had a fantastic 1-on-1. I would say it was 50-50 by the end of the game, but like that, what it did for us is it freed up other players, and other players were able to score, and you know, we kept the pressure on, and thankfully came out the winning side on the day, which, you know, bridged 44 years of a gap, and I suppose inspired the next generation then.
Several Clonakilty legends were born that day in '96 when he ended that long wait, including Padraig's legend. And after his passing, there was a statement from Clonakilty GA, and it said he was probably the best player to have worn the green and red in recent times. So, Eamonn, just how good was Padraig?
He was mercurial. He was our Morris Fitz, our Seamus Moynihan. For me, he was at the best level that I've probably played with. And I presume the reason I probably think that is because I think he got us out of more holes than anybody else in the county. You know, yeah, other people got winning scores in games, but the magic came from what Griff did. You know, he was just it's hard to put your finger on it, but he just came up with the goods so often that you're kind of going, like, you think back and you're like, Jesus, the guy was just magical. Like, he was our Messi or Maradona or Morris Fitz, whatever you want to call it. You know, he was that to us, in my opinion, anyway. You know.
Brendan, on Twitter, Richie Forrestal, he posted a lovely tweet, a lovely tribute to Padraigh. He said, the best footballer many of us ever laid eyes upon, a diminutive colossus. He was a wizard with a ball in his hands, whose magic entertained us for years, how he made us cheer. And Brendan, you would have seen so much more of Padraigh the footballer than we did at training and in games. So what do you think made him such a good player?
He was self-taught, you know, and I think that's something special because everything he did, he taught himself. I can remember him as, 15 or 16 and 17-year-old kid walking around the streets of Clon with a football in his hand all the time. He was constantly tapping it. He was constantly moving it. He was that kind of skill that he had. No one coached it to him. He was self-taught, and I think that's what we're probably missing a little bit in today's game. Everyone's almost robotic in terms of the way we play the game, and Padraigh had this instinct that he had, taught himself and had it in his natural ability, but he brought it out of himself by just constantly practicing and trying things. And he'd frustrate you as well. Padraigh was always using games as an opportunity to try something different, or maybe the same thing over and over again. If he failed the first, second, third, or fourth time, I mean, he could sell 4 or 5 dummies, but if the dummies weren't bought, he'd go back and he'd sell a 6th and 7th one to try and make it work, So he was constantly trying to improve his game. And I suppose, it was that wizardry that he had. And I'd go back to another generation. He was the Georgie Best of Clonakilty football. He had the black long hair just like him. He had the swagger just like him. He loved dumbing guys. He loved shimming, and he loved eyeing up for a goal. The points really didn't matter. I mean, there were plenty of games too. Eamonn was mentioning the games that he won for us. There was plenty of games too. I suppose Padraigh could have shot for points, and we would have got home and won by a point or two. But sometimes, that just natural instinct in him. He just wanted a goal, top corner the net kind of job, put the game to bed. And just the odd occasion, they didn't work. But most of the time, in fairness to them, they did.
Eamonn,
sorry, Kieran, just on that, Brendan's talking about the self-taughtness, and like that's a fact. But I think a lot of players that were coming out to training weren't actually aware, because Griff used to be there 10 minutes before training, 15 minutes before training, 20 minutes before training. But he was always jinking and dumbing, and he'd have a line of balls and he'd go back out and he'd come again. And like, he used to be going to me, Harty, where were you? Where are you late? Like, because training wasn't until 7, he'd be there at 20, but he'd want somebody to shoot at for the 20 minutes beforehand. But he was always jinking in between guys that were still walking onto the pitch. They were on time for training, but this was his little thing that I'm going to jink between all these guys. And, that's probably where some of it came from,
Because he developed into one of the most lethal club forwards in the county. We talked about some of his wow moments there. So, Eamonn, some other moments that stand out to you when you think of Padraigh in a Clon jersey. Any game, any goal, any point immediately jump to mind?
Well, the goal in Limerick in the Munster Championship against Clon. Jesus, I'd say that's. I don't know, Brenner, if you agree, but it looked like one of the best goals I've ever seen anyway.
Yeah, you actually, thankfully it's caught on tape, and in slow motion it still looks fast.
Yeah.
What he did, he did it, 1 or 2 little swerves of the hips, sold the most outrageous dummy, put it onto his other foot, and he absolutely clinged the top corner of the net. Keeper just was standing there. It was, and that was his third goal that day. He scored 3 goals in that Munster Club Championship, and I think that was probably the best one I've seen, without a doubt. I'd agree with Eamonn there.
Like, even listening to the 2V talk now, there's so many wow moments there. How lucky were Clonakilty fans for so long to be entertained by the skills of Padraigh?
Oh, geez, I think and beyond as well, again, reading some of the comments and thoughts that people put down that had nothing to do with Clonakilty, but just used to come to Clon games to watch and play, and again, that's something we miss in today's game. Someone as authentic and as different and wizardry as Padraigh, because everyone loves a forward like that. And just for that one moment in a game, or one moment in 3 games, it's worth waiting for, kind of a thing. And sometimes, he didn't always play great games. Sometimes he just wasn't in the mood, just like all of us were. But when that moment happened in a game, you'd kind of say, well, there's nobody else would have done that. Nobody else would have ever done that. And I think that's why people came out in their droves to watch him play, because there was always the potential of something different or something special. The rest of us were kind of plodders, as we call ourselves, just going around passing A to B. But when Padraigh had the ball inside, you just knew that, there was an extra little bit of a intensity around it. You could see in the backs that, they were standing off him because they just didn't want to go near him. And the crowd used to react to that as well.
And by the time we got to 2009, that was 13 years later. So I put Padraigh was 34 when Clon won that county title. Did he evolve as a forward over that time? By the time he got to that county final against the Bars 13 years later, was he a different Padraigh Griffin footballer, or was he still trying the audacious and the cheeky?
He was definitely still trying it anyway. There's no doubt about that. How would you say? I'd say the difference was that come those years later, he was kind of more aware of that he couldn't do it every single time he got the ball, but he was trying to decide who he'd pass it then to make sure he'd get it back. So he had kind of changed his way of going, because he knew that defenders all over the county, and guys that played in college with him and stuff like that, they all had experienced it. They all knew what was coming. So they kind of started coming up with ways to try and stop him, whether it was pull the jersey clean off him or there were several ways, and guys tried everything to stop him. So Griff just adapted at times. And like when he got on the ball, you were kind of going, okay, what's going to happen next? And it was always never a set play. You can see a forward getting a ball and you're kind of saying, okay, the play is this, and the play inevitably happens. With Pod, we're never sure what you're going to get. He could jink a fella and take him on, or he could turn back across the field, give it 60-yard ball, and you're kind of going, it's not the play, but then he ends up on it again. So it was weird in that respect, but that's what I thought Padraigh kind of changed, that he realized that he couldn't take it on all the time, because he might have 2 or 3 guys chasing him, and they weren't just chasing him to say hello, they were hauling the life out of him,
And Brendan, how did he cope with that tag of, obviously he was a standout forward for Clonakilty for so long and everybody knew about him, we've just talking about just how good he was, but the fact that other teams would have targeted Padraigh, they knew they had to stop him. How did he cope with that pressure?
I never heard him give out about it. The one thing he didn't like is unfairness. He hated players who were dirty. That's the one thing that used to irk him, because he wanted the game played fairly. But I suppose he had to be a little bit realistic in that, some defenders will step over the line a little bit. So, but he could never understand that. He could not understand why some fellas might try and puck him or step over the line a good bit in terms of stopping him from play. I played in one or 2 games. I remember when ourselves and Carberry were, going toe to toe a few years, and I think it was the year that Carberry won it. They took us to a replay. Actually, myself and Griff missed the replay because we were both injured. But I remember in the first game, they had two guys on him, one marking and one straight in front, and they had another guy sweeping back. I think he had admired it in a kind of a strange kind of way that he was getting so much attention, but he wanted the ball, so I'd say it used to frustrate the life out of him as well.
He's left such an amazing legacy in a Clonakilty jersey, and even far beyond Clon. We saw that with the tributes that were paid to Padraigh. So I'm going to put the last question to both of you. How do you think Padraigh will be remembered, and how should he be remembered?
That's a big question. I think the word wizard comes into mind because, like, he was. There's no doubt about it. He was an absolute wizard on the ball and on his game, and he pulled things out that you didn't possibly think could be done in moments, and he certainly left a lot of fond memories from that wizardry on the pitch, and unbelievably prepared for games and dedicated. He was a professional in the amateur club scene. He trained so diligently. He didn't really socialize that much outside. Maybe after a game, he might let his hair down, but everything he ate, he researched it to the last in terms of preparation and being right for it. And, he was an outstanding example for anyone in terms of wanting to be the best they possibly could. And he dedicated his playing career to football at the time. There was no this. It was first, second, and third. It was definitely first, second, and third. But wizardry, I suppose, going back to the question, he was a wizard.
Same question to Eamonn. Like I said, Clonakilty had so many outstanding footballers over the years, but how would you like Padraigh to be remembered?
I suppose nowadays there's lots of people have phones out every time there's a game. We're lucky we've a couple of scratchy VHS tapes banging around the place somewhere there. With the trials of Griff, like of when the magic happened, and I'd like for that to be the magic that I remember anyway, because I'm telling everybody about the days and the good stuff and down in the dunes, and like Griff loved this dunes down in the Shidani where we used to go. He loved it, like, and it was kind of a sadistic kind of madness that he had, that he loved it so much that he loved the train down there. The rest of us was going, oh Jesus, not again, not down here. But he was running around down there and loved every second of it. So, like, for going forward, legend. Like, there's no other word I can put on Griff. He was a legend. Lucky that I called him a teammate and a friend. But he was a legend and a hero to me, as well as a playing partner, as well as a teammate. All those guys, you have a serious bond with everyone that you win anything with. So I was lucky with Brenner and Pod and Murph and a couple more guys that we were lucky enough to be on a couple of panels that won. We were unlucky enough to be on a couple of teams that should have won as well, but it didn't happen. So yeah, legend. His name shouldn't be forgotten. It shouldn't be just, one of these things that he's remembered once every now and again. If I had my way, I'd put him up in a statue next to Michael Collins' side in town, but that's just the way it goes,
Mm.
It wouldn't be very big either.
It's a very fitting tribute, Eamonn. Just want to thank both of you for your time and just for reminiscing and regaling about one of the outstanding footballers that West Cork has produced in recent times. So thanks so much for your time, lads.
Thanks, Kieran.
Thanks, Kieran.
The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
The draws for the Cork Premier Senior and Senior A football championships were made this week. And as always, there have been some very juicy looking West Cork derbies to look forward to. In a few moments, Kieran is going to break down the various storylines for us. But to start off, I'll just quickly read out the groupings, starting with the Premier Senior draw. And in Group 1, it's Castlehaven, Carbery Rangers, Clonakilty and Valley Rovers. We'll get stuck into that one in a moment. That is extremely exciting. Group 2, it's Nemo Rangers, Ballincollig, Carrigaline and Éire Óg. Group 3 then in the Premier Senior Football Championship is the Bars, Mallow, Douglas and St. Michael's. I'll just quickly go through the Senior A draw as well. Group 1, it's Knocknagree, O'Donovan Rossa, Canturk and Fermoy. Group 2 is Clyde Rovers, Ballingeary, Newmarket and Kiskame. Group 3 then we have Newcestown, Dohenys, Bishopstown and Island Rovers. Another cracking West Cork group of death there. So Kieran, let's jump straight into Group 1 in the Premier Senior, and that's a real dinger of a group. It's the Haven, it's Carbery Rangers, it's Clon and it's Valleys.
Christmas came early for the Southern Star Sports section last Sunday night, Jack. When I saw the teams coming out for this group, it's another West Cork group of death. And what are the odds of this? Because we're down to 3 teams in the County Premier Senior Football Championship. We've the Haven, we've Ross and Clonakilty, and all 3 have been drawn in that same group. And we also have Valley Rovers as well, and they're from obviously Inishannon, so they're not too far over the road. So you won't have too much travelling for the local teams here. All the games will be in a close vicinity. But it's really intriguing. It really is. You've Castlehaven, the top West Cork team in the last couple of years, finalists in 2020, semi-finalists the last 2 years. Carbery Rangers have a new man in charge now. We had that news on Sunday night that Seamus Hayes has taken over from Declan Hayes, who's had to step back from the role due to family reasons. While you've Clonakilty in there too, the 2021 county finalists, who are now searching for a new manager as well after Hawley O'Neill decided to step down. And obviously you've Valleys there. So it's just a cracking group, and it's really intriguing. And the first round of games, you'll see the Haven up against Ross and Clonakilty against Valley Rovers. So they're 2 huge games to kick it off with. Right now, we're obviously 6, 7, 8 months away from the first county championship game, but you would fancy Castlehaven to take one of the 2 spots to come out of that group. But the other spot would be up for grabs. We saw Ross Carbery make real progress this year. They got to the county quarter final. We know Clonakilty have good footballers there. We know Valley Rovers are a dangerous team as well. They were in a county quarter final not too long ago. So it's a really exciting group, and one I can't wait for, Jack.
Yeah, you mentioned the managerial changes in Group 1. Obviously, we spoke on last week's podcast about how James McCarthy is going to remain in situ with Castlehaven. But the big departure, I guess, was in Clonakilty, where Hawley O'Neill announced he wasn't going to continue in the role. Has there been any update? Are you hearing anything along the grapevine about who's likely to come in?
There's no white smoke of yet. I think there is work on in the background. They have 1 or 2 candidates in mind that they would like to bring in, but there's nothing kind of definite as yet. And it's a obviously huge club. Clonakilty is a big club, and there's a good group of players there. Look at the team that got to the county final in 2021. What they did lose last year was Darragh O'Shea. He went back to his home club on Gaeltacht in West Kerry, and that deprived them of their top scorer of the previous 2 seasons, and they haven't managed to fill that void just yet. So that's what Clonakilty need. If Santa Claus is listening to this podcast, I think what Clon need is a couple of scoring forwards to complement their really strong back 8. Like, they have a really good defense. They're strong in midfield. I just think they need a little bit more up front. So it is an enticing job. Interesting to see who gets it. Like I said, Carbery Rangers have Seamus Hayes in there now. It's going to be a baptism of fire for Seamus, because it's his first kind of senior management role. He has had various underage manager or coaching jobs with Ross, with his school, Closh to Creech. Back in 2015, he led Kilmeen to a West Cork under-21 title, and he also took them on to a county final that year as well. So he does obviously have some coaching experience, but he's going in at the deep end now. So it's going to be interesting to see who Clon will have in the hot seat come the start of the championship, how Seamus Hayes gets on. And then with James McCarthy, it's his 4th season in charge of Castlehaven, and he told me before that he had a rule that he was only going to stay 2 years into one job, because you need to freshen things up, you need to change the voice and keep it interesting for players. So he's now going into his 4th year with Castlehaven, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes as well. So a lot of variables yet that we don't know about, Jack, but still to have Haven, Ross and Clon in the one group, it's the stuff of dreams for the Star Sport department.
It absolutely is. And then the 14 being Valley Rovers just adds that extra bit of spice to it. And just to quickly recap the other two groups in the Premier Senior. In Group 2, it's Nemo, Ballincollig, Carrigaline and Éire Óg. And in Group 3, it's the Bars, Mallow, Douglas and Michaels. We're going to switch our attention now to the Senior A Championship, and that's because there's another brilliant group. And that's in Group 3. It's Newcestown, recently relegated. It's Dohenys, it's Bishopstown even, and it's Island Rovers, who survived in Senior A by the skin of their teeth last season. So Senior A is going to be as exciting, if not more exciting, than Premier Senior for West Cork GA fans anyway.
This is such a hard championship to win. Like, there's the 12 teams in this grade every year, they're so even, and it's going to be the same in 2023. So like you mentioned there, Group C, we have 3 West Cork teams in there, Newcestown, Dohenys and Island Rovers, along with Bishopstown. And one of the first things that stood out to me about this group is that Dohenys are in with the 3 teams that have been relegated from the Premier Senior grade in the last 3 years. Newcestown are just down after being relegated in 2022. Island came down last season, and Bishopstown were the first team relegated the year before. So that shows the caliber of the teams that Dohenys are in with. But that they won't shirk that challenge. They were semi-finalists 2 seasons ago. They were quarter-finalists this year when they lost to O'Donovan Rossa. And there's also been changes to the Dohenys management team. Declan Dwyer is still in charge, but he has made changes to his backroom team. And I'll just tease it now and say we have that news in Thursday's Southern Star. And we also have all the managerial updates for the West Cork teams, from senior down to Premier Intermediate, down to intermediate. So some staying, some going. Some big clubs are looking for managers. So that's worth checking out Thursday's Southern Star for all the managerial news of those teams, as well as us breaking down further the county championship draw. So we have that Group C, but then look at Group A, Jack. You've got O'Donovan Rossa, who were semi-finalists this year. They're in with Knocknagree, who were beaten finalists. They're in with Cantork, who've just come up out of Premier Intermediate, and they're in with Fermoy as well. So that's a tough group for O'Donovan Rossa. And then you're looking at Group B, where you've Ballingeary in with Newmarket, Clyde and Kishcame. So it's going to be a very exciting competition again. And even at this stage, it's impossible to call a winner.
Yeah, absolutely. The championship can't come quick enough. We'll just quickly then go through some of the other grades, Kieran, and pick out some of the West Cork sides involved across the various groupings. And in the Premier Intermediate Football Championship, Bandon are in there, recently relegated. They're alongside Rockchapel, Castletown Bear, another one of West Cork interest, and Nemo Rangers. So quickly on that one, Bandon and Castletown Bear, would you fancy either or both of their chances of emerging from Group A?
Well, we have abandoned, so they're just down from Senior A. They were relegated after this season, so they'll hope to stop the slide. But that's a tough group. Look at that. Like Castletown Bear were unlucky not to come out of their group this year. You've Rockchapel and Nemo Rangers, so that's a very interesting one. And again, just to tease in Thursday Southern Star, there is management changes for both Bandon and Castletown Bear, so they're putting their plans in place for the 2023 season. So that's you have your West Cork derby there. And then if you go down to the next group, Jack, in Group B, where you have Bantry Blues, Ivlera, Macroom and Neva Bawn. So Bantry Blues, obviously county finalists this year, where they lost to Cantork. They beat Ivlera en route to the final. Then you have Macroom and Neva Bawn, two mid-Cork teams as well. So I think that's a very tough group. Like out of the 4 teams, 3 are mid-Cork. Neva Bawn, Macroom, Ivlera, and you've Bantry Blues in there as well. So if you're looking for a group of death in the Premier Intermediate, that's it. That's a really hard group to call. And then down in Group C, you've Kilnamartyra, Ahada, Napirsig, and Kilshannig. So Kilnamartyra were one of the favourites for the Premier Intermediate this year. Didn't work out for them, so they'll be eager to make an impression next year. So again, fierce competitive group and a lot of West Cork interest in there.
Yeah, and plenty of West Cork interest too in the Intermediate A Football Championship. In Group A, we have St. Vincent's, Glanworth, Glanmire and Drumtariff. Then in Group B, this is where it gets interesting. It's Ahabullig, Adragole, Gabriel Rangers, and Glenville. And Kieran, I'll ask you about that in a moment. But just to wrap up the Premier or the intermediate A draw, Group C sees Mitchelstown, Boherbue, Ballinora, and Kildorrery. So Adrigole and Gabriel Rangers in the same group here in Group B.
Exactly, and as far as I'm just got off the top of my head now, they were in the same group again this year, I think, where Adrigole actually came out and Gabriel Rangers didn't come out of the group, so they're going to meet again. So that's going to be a fierce contest. And Gabriel Rangers are coming off the back of winning back-to-back Carbery under-21B football championships, and they're hoping to bring through more of those young guns, while Adrigole will be hoping to build on their run to the quarter-final of this year's championship. So that's going to be a pretty big game. And I think looking at the fixtures, that'll be the second or third game in that group. Because the opening game will be Bullock and Adrigole, then you'll have Gabriel Rangers against Glenville. So Adrigole and Gabriel's are going to meet later in the competition, so there could be even a lot more on the line when we have this West Cork derby. So that's another one to whet the appetite.
And then finally, Kieran, on the football side of things, there's a new grade to get excited for. And again, lots of West Cork interest in this one too. It's the Premier Junior Football Championship. It's the first year of this new county grade. And in Group A, St. Nick's, Ballydesmond, Urhin, who will be delighted that they're going to have more than one guaranteed championship match this season, and Cullen is the fourth team in that group. In Group B, it's the Bars, Cove, Buttevant, and St. Michael's. And then another very interesting group from a Southern Star and West Cork point of view. Group C, Mill Street, Kilmurray, Kinsale, and one of the stories the Southern Star has loved covering more than any over the last number of years, St. James's. So they're going to get a chance to test their mettle at a county level from the off this season.
Yeah, and Kilmurray actually beat St. James's in the quarter-final of this year's county junior A football championship. So it'll be a chance there for James's to exact some revenge. But this is the same Kilmurray team that went all the way to the Munster Junior Club football final last weekend, and they lost to Fossa in Mallow. So Kilmurray will fancy their chances of making an impression in this new grade. So throw Kinsale in there as well, and throw Mill Street. And Group C is a very interesting group. But you're right too, Jack. Urhin in Group A. This new grade is just great news for the Beara team, because over the last couple of years, Urhin have been the only Junior A football team in Beara. So they've been automatically Beara's representatives in the County Junior A Football Championship. So they go into that competition having played no games whatsoever. And there's almost 12 months between their championship games, and that's hard going for the players of Urhin to keep the show on the road. But fair dues to them that they have. And the last couple of years, they've actually made an impression in the County Junior A Football Championship. They got to the semi-final, I think, the last 2 years. So now what they have a guaranteed 3 games next year in Group A against St. Nick's, Ballydesmond and Cullen. So that's good news for Urhin. So it'll be interesting to see how they fare.
Yeah, well, that's the 2023 Cork Football Championship draws. We're going to just run through the hurling now and pick out some of the teams from West Cork. Unfortunately, no West Cork representative in the Premier Senior Hurling Championship this year. Last year's representative, Newcestown, will be plying their trade in the Senior A Championship, and they are in Group B alongside another West Cork outfit, Courcey Rovers, Ballyhay, and Blarney. Last year's Premier Intermediate champions, Inniscarra, are in with Napirsig, Bride Rovers, and Killay. And in Group C, it's Fermoy, Clon, Carrigtwohill, and Mallow. And Kieran, Newcestown won't want to be hanging around here for too long, will they?
No, but it's again such a tough grade to win and such a tough grade to get out of. So they're in with Courcey's, who were they've been on a roll the last couple of years, and they were county finalists this year at Senior A. You've Ballyhay and you've Blarney. So it's a tough group for Newcestown, because Courcey's will want to go one step further than they did this year. And they found their feet, Courcey's, very fast in the Senior A grade. They just come up out of Premier Intermediate, and they went all the way to the final. So their tails will be up for next year. So it's not going to be an easy task for Newcestown, especially as a dual club. And this has raised its head so much since the split season came along, how tough it is for dual clubs just to keep the show on the road. And what happens is injuries pile up, and because the players are playing week in, week out, football, hurling through the group stages, and then if they're lucky enough to progress, the games just keep mounting. So it's tough on dual clubs like Newcestown, and I don't think it was any surprise last year to see, let's say, on the football side of things, or that the Newcestown footballers are relegated from the Premier Senior, the Bandon footballers are relegated from the Senior A, because they're both kind of strong dual clubs as well. So how these clubs will juggle the split season and juggle the dual commitments of football and hurling is quite key here. But like you said, Newcestown will fly the West Cork flag in the Senior A in 2023. They'll be eager to make an impression, but very much like the Senior A Football Championship, this is a very tough competition to win.
Another of the dual clubs that you referenced there, Bandon, they're in the Premier Intermediate Championship. And in Group A, they'll be up against Castle Lions, Ballincollig and Dungorney. Just to quickly run through the rest of the Premier Intermediate hurling draw. Group B is Ballymartle, Carrigaline, Éire Óg and Valleys. And Group C then is Castlemartyr, Ballinhassig, Watergrass Hill and Kilworth. Kieran, in the Intermediate A, Group A sees Youghal, Lisgould, Ahada and Ahabullogue. Group B is Sarsfields, Kildorrery, Mayfield and Blackrock. And then in Group C, it's Clodove, Middleton, Douglas and I'm never quite sure. Is it Ballygiblin, Ballygiblin? I'm going to say Ballygiblin. Ballygiblin. So apologies to all of those, everyone in Ballygiblin, for calling you all Ballygiblin. And the Premier Junior Hurling Championship then, plenty of West Cork interest here. In Group A, it's Tracton, Argerdeen Rangers, Erin's Own and Glen Rovers. In Group B, it's Kilbrittain, Milford, Ballygarvan and Ballyroe. So Barryroe even. So a West Cork derby to look forward to there. And then in Group C, it's Meelin, Russell Rovers, the Bars and St. Catherine's. Kieran, anything to say about the Premier Junior Hurling Championship?
So what we've Kilbrittain and Barryroe locking horns for the second year in a row, and Kilbrittain will go in as favourites in that game, even though we're a good bit out, because Kilbrittain are one of the favourites for this county title. They got the county final in 2021. This season did not work out for Jamie Wall and Kilbrittain, but they have the talent and experience there. But when it comes to local derby, Kilbrittain, Barryroe, it's like form. I know it's a cliche, but form does go out the window to a certain extent. Like it's real pride of the parish stuff. So that is one to keep an eye on. And you mentioned there about Bandon they're in Group A in the Premier Intermediate Hurling Championship. And just to give a bit of a teaser, there is a new man in charge of the Bandon hurlers this year. And I'm not going to say his name, Jack, because you know what I'm going to say by now. Pick up Thursday's Southern Star, where we'll reveal the new Bandon hurling manager's identity, as well as have more news on the hurling managerial merry-go-round. So we're busy beavers in the sports department these weeks, Jack. We're trying to put together the pieces of the jigsaw as clubs get ready for the 2023 season. And Hawley O'Sullivan touches on that in his column in Thursday Star. He's making the point. He goes, if you don't have your manager and your strength and conditioning coach in place now, you're already playing catch-up. He said you need to have there are two vital roles to have filled. He said you can fill the rest of the backroom team around it, but you need your S&C coach and you need your manager in now. We're just, a week and a half out from Christmas. The turkey hasn't been carved yet, but the thoughts are already turning to the 2023 season. So check out Hawley's column on Thursday too.
Here, and finally then on our recap of the championship draws, we mentioned the West Cork groups of death in the Premier Senior and Senior A football championships. But in the Junior B hurling championship, there's another group that hurling fans across West Cork will be looking forward to.
This is brilliant again. Another West Cork group of death. So in Group B, we have St. Oliver Plunkett's, O'Donovan Rossa and Bantry Blues all in together, as well as Clonakilty. So three big West Cork teams, Plunkett, Skib and Bantry in together. And there's also more West Cork interest in the confined Junior B hurling championship, because we've Gabriel Rangers in Group C, and they're there with Loch Rovers, Lakera Óg and Doneraile. So that'll be one to keep an eye on. But before we go off the championships, I have to mention too, and I'm scrolling up here to make sure I don't miss this, the Division Colleges football and hurling championships. So while Carbery, who's such a great year this year, they're through to the semi-finals of this competition, we still have the unseeded section, and we still have Beara and Muskerry in there. So Beara will take on Avondhu in their first game, and Muskerry will take on Immakilly. And we also have the Carberry Hurlers will be in the Division Colleges section of the Senior Hurling Championship. And Carberry have been drawn against Avondhu, while Muskerry have been drawn against Carrickdown. So that's two for they're the two draws for the divisional teams. And Carberry are on the lookout for a new manager after Charlie Vaughan stepped down. And before we push on, I think there's one more here, Jack. Jeez, there were so many draws the last day, and it was hard to keep an eye on them all. But it was the confined Junior B football championship, and again we have a couple of local derbies. So in Group A we've Muintovara in there with Goleen, so that'll be again to look forward to. And Deal Rovers and Ballyfinane are also in there. And then I'm looking across at Group C, where you've Garnish and Clonakilty in with Kilbryn and Araglin. In Group D, Glengariff will fly the West Cork flag, and they're in with Belgooley, Shanballymore and Doneraile. And then in Group B, you've sent Oliver Plunkett's in there with Castlelyons, St. Catherine's and Crosshaven. So as you can see from that, there's so much West Cork interest in these county championship draws. And we haven't even had a chance to look at the Carberry draws. But the good news is, Jack, guess where they are?
In Thursday's Southern Star.
There we go.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and coming up next, we'll preview Thursday's Southern Star.
The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
Okay, Kieran, the timer is against us. We've teased a lot of what's in Thursday's Southern Star already, but maybe just give us a few more cliff notes as to what readers can expect.
So obviously we've all the GA draws covered in detail, as well as the Carberry Junior A and B football and hurling championship draws, which were made at the Carberry Convention last Friday night. And we also have all the news from the Carberry Convention, where the split season penalties, the under-21 championships, they were some of the hot topics that were debated by delegates. So we have a two-page spread on the Carberry Convention and the draws in Thursday's Southern Star. Like I said earlier, we've all the news in that managerial merry-go-round, so that's well worth checking out. Have to mention one of the woman of the moment, the West Cork woman of the moment, young Jane Buckley, the teenager from Newcestown, who was superb at the European Cross Country Championships in Italy on Sunday. She finished a brilliant 5th in the women's under-20 race. Rewind 12 months ago, and Jane finished 30th, and now she finished 5th. And I was watching the race myself, and she was in the lead pack. She was up the front for the vast majority of this race. So it just shows how far Jane has come in the last 12 months, and she really has lit up the American collegiate circuit since she started with Providence College in Rhode Island. So we have news of Jane's performance there. While it didn't go as well for Darragh McElhinney, he had a disappointing race in the men's under-23 event. It's all part of the learning curve. So we have that and more. Of course, we've all the local road bowling news after Bold Cumming had their presentation night on Friday night, and there was a local winner of the Female Bowler of the Year award. So we have that in Thursday's Southern Star. We also have a very exciting news with the Cronin Motorsport dynasty. Obviously, you've Keith Cronin, Daniel Cronin, Robert Cronin, and Colin Cronin. The 4 brothers are all involved in motorsport. And Martin Watch has a really good piece about what their plans are for 2023. And there's very exciting news for Robert Cronin. So that's in Thursday's Southern Star. We also have the match report and reaction from Kilmurray's loss to Fossa in the Munster Junior Club football final. And also, we've Matthew Hurley had caught up with Paul Holland, the Ivan Gales manager, to talk about the Ivan Gales dream season. And Paul Holland made the observation that it was the tightest dressing room he's ever been in. So I think that's quite exciting as well. And we also have a very comprehensive Corny roundup, and that's by Matthew Hurley. And while I have a minute here, Jack, I have to say a big thank you to Matthew Hurley. We've had him for the last 5 months on board with the Southern Star. He's been we had him from UL. He's a media student in UL. He's been such a great addition, really, really good addition, really strong addition. He's really helped the Southern Star Sports Department.
I would say massively improved the Southern Star Sports Department.
100%. He could actually take my hot seat now, and I wouldn't even be missed at this stage. You know, Matthew really stepped up, and it's great to see his growth, development, and progression over the last couple of months. And I know he's going to go on to bigger and better things. He's a very talented writer. He's a great grasp of what this job entails. So He's going to fly the Star Nest, and he's going to go off in the next part of his college journey as he returns to UL. But just a big thank you to Matthew Hurley. He's been a super addition to the Southern Star. Just to wish him all the best for 2023 and beyond. And hopefully, Jack, when he's famous, he won't forget where he started with the two of us here in the Southern Star and on this very podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. All the best to Matthew. You've been brilliant. Just briefly then, before we wrap, the Southern Star is obviously available in shops across West Cork and beyond from Thursday morning. But if you can't make it to the shops, the roads are icy out there. Don't be dangerously driving. Go online, subscribe to the Southern Star e-paper, go to www.southernstar.ie and subscribe from less than €2 per week. At the moment, we're running a promotion, a Christmas promotion. 'Tis the season after all, whereby you can subscribe at 50% off for the first 3 months. So read the Southern Star from only €4 per month. That's less than €1 a week, depending on what month it falls in. But basically 50% off for the first 3 months of your subscription, €4 per month. Go onto our website now and you'll see that offer advertised. www.southernstar.ie/e-paper. Just cracking Christmas value. Thanks for listening to the Star Sport podcast. And thanks as well to our producer, Dylan Mangan. If you enjoy these shows, please make sure to rate, review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Slán Tamil.